Welcome to the Starting Over Podcast. I'm your host, Edward Shelton, aka Dark Logos, and this is the show where we look at the strategies, tactics, and mechanics of the game of heroclix. Definitely after I've eaten some ice cream here. You might be wondering, like, hey man, we just got a show, and you're giving us another show, and it's like, yeah. The main reason I'm giving you another show is I had the Elseworlds review done before States, but I kept having software issues, and so I couldn't get it finished, and so I had a new program that I'm trying to use for video editing, and what is this thing called? Hit Fam, Hit something. Hit Film Express. So trying to use that is I'm trying to use that primarily right now to replace the Windows Movie Maker programs that I was using, and so yeah, it's a little interesting trying to do this. Also, Windows 10 is Windows 10 is it's not the best operating system. There's a lot of like jank. Let me rephrase this. There's a lot of stuff on here that, in all honesty, I wish wasn't here. And so, anyway, that's it. So let's sort of get into today's show. So today's show is going to be about more of like the state of the game sort of things, and dealing with, I don't want to say a collapsing meta, but there was something that came up in a couple of my conversations, and really in the last few days, last 3 to 4 days, about the accessibility of heroclix and why it really isn't there. And it explains why a majority of people do not like competitive, not necessarily because of the people, because I'll be honest, if you say, oh, it's the people is the reason why I don't like heroclix, I really do have to call BS on a majority of that. Will they let you get away with anything? No. But I will say that you will have friendly matches. Even though they're tough matches, you'll have friendly matches. But what it really comes down to is not since Warren Jenn's triple Superman have we actually seen anything that was in a low rarity that an individual can play and be competitive, let alone played and was competitive and won an event, or come close to an event, winning an event. And so because of that, I really wanted to like look at some of the figures that we have in the meta, and establishing like, why is that? And I know some people are just going to say, because duh, Jakeem. And I don't really think that's the case, because if you take duh, Jakeem and duh, Goblin King out, you still have the same problem. And I really do think that's true. You can start just replacing it with other super rares. You can easily say like, hey, the new Chase Superman, he can come in and take a huge spot and start liquidating, people. You can go look at Worldbreaker Hulk as another figure that can just come in from a super rare slot and start messing with people. You can even, if I flip back and I look at like Uncanny X-Men, the Magneto Chase is no joke. He can do stupid amounts of damage. So I can't say like, oh, hey buddy, if we take these one or two things out, then everything is fine. And I really don't think that's true. And so let's sort of go in and look at the commons and uncommons, and we're going to start breaking down like why is the state of the game the way it is. But before we do that, we're going to establish a framework. The framework is this: for a game to be successful, commons and uncommons have to be the framework of team building, and that you should be able to build something that's comparable or at least mildly comparable to a high-end team. You shouldn't be able to get all the bells and whistles and polish, but there should be some elements that any player should be able to come in, grab and go, and utilize those figures for the core of their team, and have at least a 40% success rate. And the main reason I say 40% success rate is that if you start getting to a 50 success rate, then you start devaluing your higher rarity figures. So you at least need a 40% success rate, enough to motivate you to move beyond the commons, uncommons, look more at the rares and super rares, not necessarily having to dip into the chase category. Okay, so there is that. All right, now we're gonna start at Nick Fury, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and then we're gonna go move forward in time. And then what we're going to do is we're going to try to extract figures that are actually like pretty decent, and then out of the commons and uncommon slots, and start to see like, well, why didn't these figures take off, or why aren't these figures looked at now? And so let's start off. So we start off with common Nick Fury, and this is one thing I also am sort of holding to. Your number one figure should be the flagship figure for the set. It should set the tone of where the set is going, and also provide a figure that everybody should want to use at some point in time during their play, while the set is legal. Okay, that's my personal philosophy. That's not necessarily WizKids' philosophy, and that's not necessarily something that WizKids may want to constantly back up or enforce or even think about. But I do think it is something to be mindful of going into the future. So let's start off with Nick Fury's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And first off, we see Nick Fury. Now, Nick Fury comes in at 65 points, and then you can bring in additional Nick Furies at 25 points. But at 65 points, you're getting a meager 5-click dial. Yes, you get regen, but unfortunately with toughness and what else, it's not going to really do you any good. Now, the additional 25 point figures are great, but unfortunately, you're going to end up wanting to mark the primary Nick Fury so that you know which one it is the primary Nick Fury, so you can sort of save him and maneuver him around. But you have the rally trait. Whenever Nick Fury hits one or more opposing characters, add 1 action token to your action total this turn. That's not bad. And then you have the Who's the Real One. Nick Fury can use Shape Change once per turn for all characters with this name, and I really don't like that. After a roll for Shape Change, you may swap Nick Fury with another friendly Nick Fury, blah, blah, blah. This character can't use Shape Change for the attack and becomes a new target. So you're automatically... You're rolling Shape Change, but it doesn't do you any good, because all you're doing is swapping over another character to be shot, and it's going to die, and you just gave your opponent 25 points to save a 65-point character that's really not helping you that much. Okay, so when we keep going, we look at the Section Chief, 45 points for leadership in a mediocre range. Even if you look at the utility that was around that time, that's really craptastic. You look at S.H.I.E.L.D. Elite Agent. Again, this redhead lady, it might be a firecracker in her looks, but she's really not offering that much in the gun category, or the weapons category, that is. Because, running shot to blades, then running shot, then blades, while that's interesting, it's really not that good. And it's expensive because you're getting upfront running shot, psychic blast and damage reduction, plus a team ability. So overall, this character is overcosted. And I know, yes, it's an agent and it's nice, and check it, girl power, blah blah blah. But this is a piss poor figure. I would not build an army around this figure. And this is supposed to be an elite agent. You go to Sharon Carter. Sharon Carter really isn't that much better overall. Her damage value is sort of pathetic. Her attack values are sort of pathetic. And she's coming in at 50 points. And then we'll just sort of shift down a little bit more. And we'll look at the Shield Field Agent. Not that useful. The Shield Bodyguard is interesting, but functionally just stands around 90% of the time and doesn't do anything that's really useful for momentum in the team outside push to click 2 and give all the little swarmy dudes an 18 defense. And realistically, that's not that good. Not even during, when Nick Fury Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. came out. It is sort of weak. So we're going to keep going, and then we hey, here's Peggy Carter, and this is like our first ray of sunshine. But why is that? If we're looking between that 35 to 75 points, figures that are in this common slot, she's doing the best. And unfortunately, it's because she's a prime and she's getting the benefits and the point values and point values and calculations of a uncommon. And that's where I really think the big problem comes in when you start talking about the primes. And you may even get a little additional bump on top of that. So if you keep going down, your commons go all the way to number 16, Nomad. And you see some other characters like Bucky is mad, Sarah Garza is trash, Agent Ward is trash, Delight LMD is trash, Hydra Recruit is actually okay, but Hydra Recruit is only okay because functionally for 20 points, you're able to lower your opponent's defense from range plus increase your damage. So functionally, you're getting a +1 attack and a +1 damage if you sort of look at it that way. So I look at that as a bonus character, and this is probably one of the few characters that you could build a team around. And unfortunately, with the trait that this figure has, the trait benefits you for playing more Hydra. Well, unfortunately, Hydra as a keyword and figures that are useful from that keyword really don't show up that often. And because they don't show up that often, it creates a disadvantage. Because if you invest in this figure, you're really not getting much return when you start looking at the characters with Hydra. Now, I know some of you would say, but Dark Logos, Hydra Cap, he's awesome, Hydra Cap. Yeah, okay, great. We had to wait how long for Hydra Cap? But if we're going to look at integrating into just commons and uncommons, there really aren't that many characters that this Hydra Recruit is useful with for the trait. But other than that, coming in at 20 points, 3 clicks, Hydra TA plus enhancement, overall it's probably one of the best figures that we've seen so far outside of Peggy Carter. So when we start going into the uncommons, there's some things that immediately stand out for me personally, and one of the main things that stands out to me is Fitz. Now, Fitz is a figure that I think most people just overlooked because his Fast Forces version is so much more better. I'm not going to say ridiculously better, but significant enough to pay attention to. And because of that, it puts the player at a disadvantage because Fitz is not a bad figure because of the elements that you can use with him. What happens is that when you start looking at how much you're paying for this Fitz, in a monkey versus paying for the 50-point other Fitz and getting a free monkey, you'll pay for TK and a pretty better perplex on click 2 from the other fits instead of enhancement and being able to send that enhancement through, field hoverbots, you know. And so that's where like a lot of distinct things come in. But if we look at fits allows you to integrate a beginner level POG game while at the same time creating other little instances that can be creatively used, whether it's with the teleporter or characters that KO other friendly characters for game effects. This is really, really good and something to actually like look at. Now, I know some people might say like, hey, Edward, you were like high on fits back during the review of Nick Fury Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I was. And then you might say, well, hey, Edward, why haven't you used fits? And that's the thing is, I've tried. I've tried to use fits in my personal playtesting, and the problem comes in is that a lot of the elements that would make the fit spots better will be more useful, if the hoverbots just have free move, and that their actions didn't count against your action total. Or you didn't have to do this. My eyes and ears. Hoverbot can use sidestep. Hoverbot doesn't require opponents to break away. Doesn't block line of fire. Can't have damage transferred to it by Mastermind, and can't be the target of Perplex. So you can't do jack to this bot at all. It can't be buffed with a 5 move, 8 attack, 16 defense. It's tiny with 0 damage. This thing does absolutely bupkis. Then you said it has Hoverbot activation. Give Hoverbot a power action. So you're giving it a power action. Choose a friendly character named Fitz or Simmons. Until the end of turn, that character can use their printed damage powers as if they occupy the square Hoverbot occupies. Now it's good with Simmons because Simmons has support. Okay, but here's the thing. You just took a power action and now you can't use support. So it was a good attempt, but it's just bad design. And I understand, it's like, a character's doing what they're doing from safety through the hoverbot. Yeah, I get that, but it's still bad design. You should be able just to activate the effects, and it forces your opponent to just kill the hoverbot. And if it wasn't for that, the hoverbots have very limited movement, so them getting into the field is going to be difficult. Even midfield, it's going to take 2 turns. And then activating, a power action and all this other stuff, it's just not great design. If you're looking at actually having a functional support. But then it's like, okay, well, we bring Fitz up, and then Fitz doesn't have anything that really helps him stay alive long term. Now, I know the stealth isn't bad, but he really doesn't contribute anything other than being a shield battery and an enhancement battery. So, or in power. I mean, same thing for Simmons. And Simmons isn't bad completely. She's in that same point range as Fitz, but there's no reason for you to play Fitz and Simmons. You're going to either play Fitz or play Simmons. But when you're starting to look at, the foundation of a good character, if you're looking at something that's going to be more useful, 9 times out of 10, I hate to say it like this, it's going to be Simmons. And here's why. Simmons gives you Outwit plus Shield Team ability. So she has the ability to increase your damage plus increase your range plus Outwit your opponent. She has the Field Team backup thing, which is completely pointless because her damage value is a 1 and she has a 9 attack at best. So that's completely stupid. That's a waste of a trait that inflated her cost needlessly. Then you have the unusual DNA in the lab. Give Simmons a power action and choose an adjacent friendly character. That character can use Force Blast, Incapacitate, and Smoke Cloud until your next turn. This power is freaking scrumptious right now. Mainly because you're able to give a character Force Blast. And now you're able to, I hit You're a peace machine. Oh, I got force blast, man. So yeah, you get knocked back. Oh, I went and tagged your taxi person. Oh, but I have force blast, so they get knocked back away from all your Doc Ocks. So she has usefulness, but unfortunately, because she's so old, most people haven't looked at her usefulness recently. Let alone looked at building a team around her. And unfortunately, this power is on click 2 and 3 and 4, where she has support, and you have to push again to get to outwit. And at that stage, you're just giving your opponent points. I hate to say. So yeah, this figure could have been something like later on when people are getting a little bit more creative and looking for some different options, could have been useful. And even more so, let's just say you didn't give Force Blast, or let's just say you didn't give Incapacitate or Smoke Cloud, but you were able to give Barrier, or you were able to give Psychic Blast. She would be used. She would be used a lot. And I know what would happen is they're like, hey, Dark Logos, we don't want to give away all this penetrating damage for free. And I'm like, do you? I mean, really, do you? Because when I start looking at all these low numbers and not any Psy Blast and very little exploit, I think Simmons would have been a godsend for a lot of figures for over a year and a half. Even if you had to push to click 2 to help them be viable in this game space. All right, so let's keep rolling. Winter Soldier, the Invade Your Territory is good. Deadly Sniper is good. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff about Winter Soldier that's very great. Blackwing, I still stand by Blackwing. No, not Blackwing. That's not him. I was Blackwing's okay. There's another character I was thinking of, Blackout. Blackout. I still stand by Blackout. I think Blackout is a really solid piece. It's just that Blackout requires a lot more skill to play. Now I know some people will say, "But Dark Logos, how can you like Blackout and then say like Sarah Garza's trash?" Okay, and here's why. Okay, and I know a lot of people are using Sarah Garza to pilot the Quinjet. Okay, so anyway, going back, Blackout has the ability to create his own barrier and smoke cloud. He may also activate either as a free action to instead place one marker. Opposing characters occupy any of his smoke cloud markers, modify their attack values by -2 instead of -1. Okay, he offers a lot of control. You can just, if you know you're going to try to tie up somebody, you just go up, rolled up phasing. Oh, I brought this Doc Ock here, -2 to your attack because I put this free smoke cloud down. Sucks for you, bro. There's cool things you can do, but unfortunately, again, you have to be more creative. And that's the part where I feel like, yeah, he's not going to be useful because his uses are not obvious, and his limitations of like one free smoke cloud, most people are going to look at as not good enough. Definitely later on when we get storms like 6 free smoke cloud. All right, but overall he's not bad. Blackout's not bad. Then you look at Hive with the Parasite again. You're able to do some cool things with Pogs, but again, most people aren't going to do anything. And then after the size changes and issues with tiny size, this plasticity poison stuff isn't worth jack. So there's some concerns here. Like, there's some constant things that you can see that there are shifts in game design, game philosophy, and what is important to the game throughout the process of making these figures or other figures. And we'll see that later on. All right, so skipping through the rest of these figures, they're really not that great. You can look at the normal Baron Blood, and he's okay. You look at the Prime Baron Blood, and he's sort of crap. yeah, he's sort of crap. So that's just how I feel. So we can see Nick Fury, Agent of Shield, was primarily set up for you to play cops and robbers, and that was it. You were going to play cops and robbers, and then you're going to reenact that fantasy. But they weren't really designed to be useful beyond the set when we start looking at our base foundational framework, and that is a problem because if the swarm tactic using little mini soldiers and henchmen is not functional at low points or even saying at 300-point game, then you have to reestablish then what's the point of minions, because minions just you're just saying that minions are they gimp your force. They cripple your force because there is no way to make them cost effective and useful. And so I would feel that a minion at this stage needs to be 20 points, 25 points at max, 10 attack, 2 damage, 6 range, and sidestep. Maybe no toughness, or like if you're adjacent to a friendly character that's also named blank blank minion, you get toughness. I think that would be better representation of a soldier for either Hydra or for Shield, and allow you to be more focused on formation. Yes, it opens you up to Pulse Wave and Energy Explosion and Quake, but it would allow you to have some mechanics that would be a lot more functional and would work in a team setting. You also need to have these characters, even though you had the rally mechanic, you need to have an attack value where the rally mechanic can actually be functionable, instead of having a craptastic attack of 9 or 8 trying to hit an 18, 19, or 20, which was common at that point in time in game design. So yeah, dumb idea, very bad design. And we can see why Nick Fury's commons and uncommons, no one uses them. Alright, so we're going to fast forward a bit. We're going to look at Superman. I'm going to be a little bit more faster. I realized I was probably a little too thorough with Nick Fury. But when we start looking at Superman and Wonder Woman set, we realize that really, like, a majority of our figures starting off are horrible. Like, ridiculously horrible. They don't introduce anything that lets the player get ahead. The most creative thing is the reporter mechanic and the world needs to know trait. And unfortunately, you have to be, perfectly in the square for this to go off. And you to send the reporter out. And that, to me, is bad. First off, you have to have line of fire. And then you're able to give these characters these debuffs. So you're either feeding your opponent easy 20, 30, 40 points, or you're just using that character basically as point filler. And unfortunately, there's better point. Well, fortunately, there is better point filler, and unfortunately, these mechanics don't come off that sound. Now, I know someone could say, but Dark Logos, you wait until they're pushed, and then you walk them up, and then then they'll have to clear, then the following turn, you do this, blah, 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 the world needs to know. And then I would come back and say, it's like, if they have Outwit, dude, that power is gone. That power is gone. So, overall, as much as I would want, like, the reporters to work, they don't. Now, Accountable, this dude is boss. I said he was boss before, but nobody wanted to listen to me. Exposure of Secrets, Accountable can use Outwit. When he does, he can use Improved Targeting, ignores hindering terrain, and doesn't need line of fire if the target is occupying hindering terrain within 10 squares, which functionally gives him a 6 base range Outwit, and if they're in hindering wherever within 10 squares, he can come in and just outwit them. Now, there is a rat on here that says Accountable can use Outwit. When he does, he can use Improved Targeting, ignores hindering terrain, and doesn't require range or line of fire. Oh gosh. If the target is occupying hindering terrain within 10 squares. So it's pretty much around the same thing. So except I think they added, I don't know what they added. Anyway, I guess it's I'll deal with that another day. But accountable is great because now with the whole new Jakeem meta, if Jakeem's in hindering, accountable can start jacking with him. He also can jack with Shredders and a few other characters, but he is 3 clicks deep. And I know some people will say, but Dark Logos, we have Black Panther. And I'm like, daggone it, we do have Black Panther. And that's a really good argument. Okay? But anyway, sort of moving on. You're not going to use Huntress. Even though she does something that we don't see in Nick Fury, is that she comes out with a mediocre range, but 10 attack, 3 damage, in similar point values that a majority of the soldiers were coming in at 60 points, plus a useful TA with Batman TA, and more clicks of life. Now, she has a trait, improved movement, ignores hindering. She also has World's Finest. You can't always depend on your powers card. Friendly characters named Power Girl modify their combat values by +1 if they have a power or ability countered. And that's nice if we had a good Power Girl, but we don't. So, unfortunately, this is not that great. It is a situational trait, and she is paying for it. So if we did take the trait away, we're probably paying like 55 points, really 50 points if we're pushing it. And I really would say pushing it. So, we could see Power Girl. And, she has a trait that allows Huntress to get toughness. And the stats on this Power Girl are really not that good. And her power combination is not that good. And she's coming in the same price point as Jakeem. There's no reason for a person to play this figure when you have Jakeem Thunder. Now, I know someone would say you're comparing a super rare... You're comparing a super rare prime to a common. And I understand how people would feel. But if the power gap is so huge that I can't even consider using Power Girl, then something's wrong from a game design perspective. Now, you might say, well, should Power Girl be better or or Jakeem Thunder worse? And what I would really argue is Power Girl needs to be better, at least 9 clicks deep. Maybe not have as high defensive stats, but her hypersonic speed should be, at minimum click 2. Charge on clicks 5 and 6, and possibly maybe late dial running shot or something like that. And she should at least be 8 or 9 clicks at a point value of 140. Now, unfortunately, what weighs her down is all that damage reduction she has, and she has a power combination on her first click of charge, super strength, and invincibility. So all those things together hiked up her price to stupid levels. Now, the counter could be for a tweak is to remove that advantage of taking away the team ability, and then that should drop her price down to somewhere around 120. And then it's just a lot more reasonable because this character is primarily a melee piece, not a range piece. And so I feel like that would actually be a lot more useful just from a design perspective. Now, I know some people would think the wild card ability of Power Girl would invite newer players or people that are looking to play on a budget to introduce her into the teams and use her as a solid attacker. But again, unfortunately, as we're going to progress, we can see that no, there's other characters that you could have had or had at the time, or even now, that does that role better for getting Superman ally. Now, you might have to go to the rare category when you start looking at Lois Lane, but you can get that Superman TA for cheap, or you can go into Batman versus Superman and play the 135-point Superman, who by far kicks, Kara Zor-El's butt 15 ways to Sunday. Hypersonic speed, same range, similar stats up front, just overall more clicks of life. I take that back. I think they're the same clicks of life. Just better mobility, better everything. I think better defensive damage too, and just moving attacks. So I would pick a BVS 135-point Superman who also has Superman team ability over Power Girl. And unfortunately, they're both commons or uncommons. I mean, I think that Superman might be an uncommon. So keep sort of strolling through. We run across our first useful character out of Superman Wonder Woman, which is Hat. Only because he has pick of power, but he has a limited pick of power, and there's some powers that are just doesn't do him any good to take a power action and try to use support, because you can't, because then you have to take another power action to use support. You can't take a power action to use range combat expert or close combat expert. You can't use those powers. So you're really more looking at taking a power action to use powers that you normally would use for free, or taking a free action to get powers that are normally a power action. So there's, being able to get TK with Hat, being able to get Energy Explosion with Hat, Psychic Blast with Hat. Hat's usability is way higher than a lot of other characters that we've looked at, mainly because Hat can react, and he's 5 clicks deep. Whereas the majority of what we saw in Nick Fury's Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. was very locked with pre-programmed in options, and that's why there's problems. Alright, so now we start going into Superman at 150, and again we compare her, Superman, to Power Girl, and we go up in one rarity and up 10 points, and everything gets better. Like everything, you get another click of invulnerability, you get more 4 damage, you get more clicks of life, you get hypersonic speed for 2 clicks and sidestep, you get full dial movement. It's better. Now, the thing that I look at is you also have the odds are against me, which allows you to do multiple attacks potentially in a turn. And then you also have Standing Tall, which says give Superman a free action, remove 1 outnumber token from this card, and he can use willpower this turn, which is also useful. But unfortunately, it drains from your odds against me token pool, which I rather have that built up. So when we look at this, you would think this would be a character that a new player could build around. But we already know, even though it has a high mobility and charge, it just does not fit. He doesn't have the range factor, and at 150 points, there's not that many other figures that you can put in with him to be useful. So while he could come in and just lay a thumping, and it's nice, but he's just going to get picked apart before he gets to approach, unless you build or craft a really useful and a really well thought out team. And unfortunately, if we already look so far, most of those tools aren't there. There is no cheap or respectable barrier. There is no cheap or respectable perplex that's so far in this set. And so we can keep looking, Hawk Girl's okay, Red Tornado is okay and was useful for a period. Superman 2 is still trash, always will be trash. And they try to manipulate stats and their own formula, and it failed. It failed horribly. No one used Superman 2. Wonder Woman, odds against me, Wonder Woman at 125 is not bad. It's not great either. It's just okay. Brutal at rookie level is probably one of the few standouts, but again, he's getting stats around the rare level. He's getting powers and abilities around the rare level. So, of course, he's going to skew things. Clark Kent is the first thing that we see with him is that we have a prob. And that would be very useful for new players to get a prob, or if somebody trying to build a competitive team is to have prob. Not only that, you're getting your Superman ally. That's great. You're also getting your World Needs to Know. That's sort of craptastic, but okay. But now it's in a trait, so it can't be outwitted. Then you have Superman Was Here, where in clicks 3 and 4, but chances are you're not going to survive long enough to use that. Now, I would be willing to pay 60 points if Superman Was Here was on click 1 or click 2. Okay? And now I'm able to sort of justify his existence, on dead turns, because I can summon in a Superman Pog that is hypersonic speed, 9 movement, flight, 11 attack, 18 defense, and 3 damage with close combat expert. That's a lot more respectable. So, we can look at Jimmy Olsen, and Jimmy Olsen does something that's great because he provides a newer player or somebody looking for something different a 25-point perplex. Also using the Superman Signal Watch, which you can do some shenanigans if you're playing to use a Superman. Uh, then you have General Lane, which by far has been one of the most influential uncommons. Uh, I think really since he came out, I just think a lot of people don't understand like how strong he is, and he was a big impact during limited. Then you have Lana Lang, which is 20 points for Empower, which I would say is really, really good from a cost point perspective. You have Ulysses, which looks like a really good attacker, but in actuality is a really craptastic attacker. And you have Superboy, who has way too many team abilities to actually be functionable. And Sister Superior, I think, is a good piece, but unfortunately, you need to bring in too many bits and pieces to make her good. So, if we look at this, and we're going through these figures, what can we see? There's not a lot of stuff for a person to build on. Let's jump into World's Finest. Superman, build with. Shifting Focus Batman, build with. Robot Man, crap. Mr. Nobody, good for limited and sort of right now. Booster Gold, good for the ID card. Iron crap, Tin crap, Creeper crap, Occultist crap, Black Cat crap, Druid crap, Witch useful. I'll take that back. Druid's also useful. Warlock is also useful. Superman again, Shifty Focus Superman again, useful. The Superman Prime, up until Jakeem, actually pretty useful. Negative Man and Crazy Jane, okay, whatever. Allura, okay, very specialized. I still stand by Desaad. That Desaad is a really, really good piece. There's a lot of elements that you can do with Desaad. I just think a lot of people just skipped over because I don't know why. Blue Beetle is Jason Blood is just too expensive. The Wizard is boss. Okay, the Apprentice is nice, but 25 points, only being able to perplex friendlies. I can go over, unless I'm really building that mystical theme team, I can go over one set back and get Jimmy Olsen and just have a normal perplex. Okay, Demon, he's situational. So when we look at that, we have a lot more useful figures, okay, in the common slot. And so then it's no wonder, it's like, why do we still see Shifting Focus Superman? Because he's useful and accessible. Why do we still see Batman maybe here and there on ID cards? Because he's accessible and he has access to really good stats for real cheap. I can go into the rares and get more of the Shifting Focus elements, but I don't have to, okay? And so there's some things to really look at right there, plain as day, that World's Finest, even though you had, those mystical packs that weren't that fun, that what we really realistically can see is that if you stack a lot of functional pieces in low rarity, people will gravitate to it, grab onto it, and bring it into competitive. All right. Now, let's look at BVS real quick, and I know this is a movie set, so it's going to be a little bit different. So we have the Superman that I was telling you about, the 135-point Superman, and you just look at him, and he's far better than Power Girl, and you're more likely to use her than Power Girl, and you start to ask yourself like serious questions. Question number one, like, why am I seriously, using, Power Girl when I can play this other Kryptonian? Situation number two is, why all of a sudden does, Superman have Endom and Power Girl doesn't? That's something that really needs to be looked at. Oh, never mind, Power Girl does. I take that back. Sorry, my bad. But anyway, so I digress. But when you start like just straight up comparing the two figures, you're just like, oh yeah, Superman all day. All right, so you can play with that Superman. You can't really play with this Batman. This Batman's crap. This Wonder Woman is actually pretty good, but unfortunately, primarily as an ID card. Lex Luthor is broken strong. He is broken strong. Yeah, that's the best way I can put it. And he's a common, and he is probably the most useful figure out of this entire Gravity feed. Actually, I take that back. He is the most useful figure out of this entire Gravity feed. Okay. So when we look at, Batman versus Superman, really what has changed? Okay, why was Superman Wonder Woman crap? World's Finest great, and Batman vs Superman really have like two decent figures. Okay, it doesn't make sense when we're looking at accessibility. If I'm, rebooting the franchise and I want, people to, gravitate to my product and use the product, I want them to actually come in and get a nice foothold where they feel like, oh, I had a couple of close games. If I only had maybe this rare, I could substitute this other figure that I'm just using to fill points in with this rare, and now my Superman can do blank. Or if I substitute in this particular, other figure, my Batman now would have been able to survive for 2 other turns. Like, these are thought processes that should have been showing up, that we should have been seeing in our commons, or at least try to reflect into our rares, but we haven't. Alright, so I'm going to fast forward a little bit, look at Captain America Civil War, and I'm going to point some things out real quick with Captain America Civil War. Yes, you have I'm with Cap and Iron Man is right traits. Those are optional. They can reflect in the point value, but they don't necessarily have to, and I'm completely fine with that. Alright, but when we start looking at Captain America, he's coming out the gate. Better stats, better abilities than a lot of other commons. Okay, he's accessible. Even at 60 points, he's coming out the gate with a strong special power and decent stats. All right, for a low investment, great team ability, really accessible. Iron Man, exact same situation. Both the full point and the 60 point dial is really great. Then you get craptastic Black Widow. Like, why would I do that? Why didn't you give her charge? She flat out charges in the movie. You see it in the promotional video. Why doesn't she have charge? That doesn't make sense. The figure with stealth isn't useful for a new or returning player when you're buying 15 of these things from Target. You're like, oh great, oh gosh, I'm looking for something different. I'm looking for some fun, and then all of a sudden, you look around and you're like, oh, let me open up my stuff. And as you open up your stuff, it's like, oh look, I got another Black Widow that does what every other freaking Black Widow does. Okay, so let's just keep going. So when we look at Black Widow, War Machine, Ant-Man, and Hawkeye, like Hawkeye is useful-ish. He's not the best. He's useful-ish. And I wanted Red Wing to be a uncommon, but unfortunately he's a rare. And he would have actually been useful for pointing out, like, hey, look, here's a good figure that could change things. But unfortunately, no, he's craptastic. So you have a high probability of getting Captain America or Iron Man, and if you're a new player coming in, you are not royally boned. Okay. Now, when we look at the Captain America Civil War OP set, now that's hot fire trash for majority of it. It really is. But it was designed from a Battle Royale perspective, and that Battle Royale perspective, I'll just leave it at, it did what it was supposed to do. I know some of you say you skipped X-Men. Bear with me. I just want to make sure I clump those two together. But when we start looking at that entirety of those commons and uncommons, You'll never really want to play that Captain America. You never really want to play that Iron Man, okay? That common Iron Man. The Vision is mediocre at best. Miss Marvel is probably one of the few pieces that actually lives up to her point value. But she still comes in at a high point value. And the only reason I say that is she has a good amount of damage reduction plus super strength and a okay attack value and an okay damage stat. Okay, and her trait is okay. Wasp is crap. Yellow Jacket is probably one of the better support figures that we've had, and that would help a new player get into the game. Doc Samson is okay. The Spider-Man, the one with the triple target and 4 range is interesting, and it's better for Golden Age than it is modern. Radioactive Man's crap, Cold Blood's crap, Bullseye's crap, Silhouette's crap, Jack-O-Lantern's crap, Patriot's crap, Jester's crap. You're looking at a hot, freaking fiery ball of cow crap right here, okay? But it's all designed to fight each other and be in factions. So that's where it's bounced around. But when you take it outside of that experience, you have a problem from a game design perspective because you have 2 competing experiences. One is the sealed experience, and the second is the Battle Royale experience. And the Battle Royale experience is where the introductory is, and that from the introductory, the player should be saying to themselves, hey, look, I'm going to go and use these concepts that I gained from the Battle Royale into constructed play. And that's not happening. If we look at Uncanny X-Men, we actually see I think where a lot of us realized where the dials were shrinking. And so we had some mild complaints. But there were some interesting things that came out, was that functionally we can build fuller teams with more figures. So you had an Uncanny X-Men Colossus coming out being respectable at 50 points. And you have Nightcrawler at 50 points, which is more of, I think he's sort of just more like I can get around and tie people up. Storm at 50 points was probably by far one of the best utility figures that stealth teams have ever had. Thunderbird coming in at 50 was okay. Emma Frost at 80 was okay. Not the best, but okay. Wolverine was not my Wolverine. We could keep sort of scanning through. I had so many problems with Lady Mastermind that year, it wasn't even funny. Prism, interesting. Riptide, we've had weird fantasies about Riptide in this community. John Greycrow, dude is boss. Just saying. Vanisher was used up until Overdrive as the best taxi in the game. Then we had the number 20 Wolverine at 115 points, which is way overcosted. Then we get a 50-point Cyclops, which is not that bad. It's not the best, but it's not that bad. Beast, he's okay. Kitty Pryde, she's okay. Both her and the Prime. The other Cyclops, number 24, is a little expensive, but not bad. You have a 100-point Jean Grey, which is way too overcosted. Magneto coming in at number 29 is probably one of the best figures that we have in the game right now. And we have Juggernaut at 150, and he is really, really, really good. Now, here's the thing. If we come back and we look at this, we have some accessible pieces, but we're also seeing a shift in game design where the dials are shorter, and unfortunately, because game design didn't really fully think about this and focus on the dials being shorter, the defensive options to survive attacks or reduce down attacks were mitigated greatly. And so there's stuff from Captain America Civil War OP that just comes in and just trounces some commons in X-Men. Now, I know, again, I said Captain America Civil War was a hot garbage fire of crap. It is, but unfortunately from a defensive perspective and an options perspective, Uncanny X-Men is worse. Now, we have a little bit more utility in Uncanny X-Men in the commons and uncommons, but not compared to Captain America Civil War. Then we get to Spider-Man. And we start skimming through Spider-Man, and we can start to see, like, nope, I'm not using any of this. I don't have any incentive to use any of this except for like the Thug and Betty Brant. Thug, Betty Brant. Green Goblin is only good for Norman Osborn. Stiltman if you want a Colossal Retaliator. And Vermin is interesting if you want to try to do an offshoot of Pog Tech, but be limited by the number of rat swarms you can have out. That's a problem. When we start looking at the uncommon, Scarlet Spider is moderately okay. Toxin is crap. Mary Jane is, again, another 25-point perplexer, but she's really not the best 25-point perplexer. You know, I'd rather have Jimmy Olsen. Unless you want to do something with Spider-Man, then yeah, Mary Jane is useful. Then we have Venom, which you would think would be a little bit better for the price value, but isn't. Cottonmouth at low points is okay. Hobgoblin is crap. Jackal is crap. Anaconda is useful in her own way. And Norman Osborn is useful if you have other Green Goblins on the sideboard, and then he becomes stupid and probably one of the best supports in the game. But again, why aren't people going to use him? Because it requires you to have an in-depth knowledge of how the sideboard works. And if you're a newer player, or a player that's looking to play casual, or a player that's looking to start trying to build on a lower budget, the more figures you have to collect, the harder it is to run the tactic. Now, I know someone could say, like, hey, Dark Logos, all these figures should be like $1 to 50 cents. And I understand, but also you have to come from an accessibility standpoint that if your local comic book shop is not holding on to these pieces, guess what? You're not going to get them if you're having a low budget issue crisis. So, I mean, as we wrapped up, Superior Foes of Spider-Man, we can see, like, nothing that we really, really, really use from that set is in the commons or uncommons. I'm just pointing this out, people. All right, I'm going to skip over Turtles because Turtles are freaking their own anomaly. Let's go into Joker's Wild. And this should start solidifying a really huge point. In Joker's Wild, we tried, let me rephrase that. We as a community and game design together tried to integrate this whole concept of huge teams and being able to field comic book rosters, and being able to come in and have something similar to a comic book accurate engagement. Okay. And I saw folks, whether you like the whole, like, look, man, I'm using Jakeem on JSA team, homie. If you didn't like that, fine, I understand that. But you got to admit and respect people that did do that and had, like, six-figure teams. Or they ran KC Green Lantern with the JSA. Like, you have to respect people that do that because they're showing you that they didn't just run the team with pure support, prop, perplex outwitters. So anyway, let's sort of break it down. All right, so we start off. Look, our flagship character, the Joker, he is a joke. He sucks. There's nothing really creative or useful about him. He is the worst Joker in this set. And truth be told, having the Joker in the common slot was a good idea because of his namesake. Unfortunately, they didn't give us anything that we would want as a player. It's just the typical, this is a crappier version of the super rare. So why would I want it? Oh, he's less points. Okay, so I get a low point crappy version when I could spend more money and get a decent upgraded version. And in this case, I'd rather hold out. You have to give me a legitimate reason why I'm going Econoclass. Definitely when you show me, here's the, Hoopty, and then, a couple of classes upgraded, you show me the Bentley. Like, you need to tell me why I need to consider the Hoopty. And there's no reason whatsoever. All right, so, Harley Quinn, situationally useful. Very situationally useful. Joker Thug, situationally useful. Now, I know, I'll come back to Harley Quinn real quick. I know some of you might say, but hey, Dark Logos, she's a 3-click perplex with stealth and Batman enemy. Yes, unless you're wild carding, you're not going to be using that Batman enemy hardly at all. And you're not getting anything good from Harley. Okay? And the stealth is the only thing that I really think is useful with her. Other than that, I think she's. The stealth and perplex. Other than that, I don't really see her being much better than Jimmy Olsen for 25 points, and Betty Brant, I feel, outperforms her in terms of utility. So let's just sort of skim through. No one's using Cobra Fanatic. No one's using Court of Owls Initiates, even though they potentially do set the new standard of, hey, look, we're 10 points. You can fill us in, and you can do something with us. And we can be fodder. And I actually like that. Like, oh, wow, they can be fodder and useful. Okay, Green Arrow is a joke. Robin is a joke. Wildcat is okay. I have to be honest about that. The Court of Owls Assassin is a joke. Colonel Rick Flag is a joke. Amanda Waller at that stage is a joke. In the new rules, she is really good. 25-point leadership. Black Lightning is good, but he is very soft, and he really needs to have a team where he fits in as a secondary attacker role. He has Outsiders, which does make him expensive for a stat combination, but you can see that he primarily is a support secondary attacker / control. And that's a complicated thing from a player base where damage output is a stronger control. Why am I only using in-cap with 3 targets when I could easily just kill you? Now the problem comes back is that the damage numbers are not balanced for that. So you can't value in-cap if 4 damage is easily accessible or commonly accessible. If you don't have to spend a lot of energy for 4 damage or higher. Now, if a lot of characters are doing 3 damage or less, on average, then yes, in cap is more useful. But once you start taking that away, then it's you have some different things that you have to think about. And I know some people would say like, hey, but Black Lightning can functionally incapacitate 3 characters, which is more useful in Swarm. And I see that. And you can even say you can use Outsiders to limit damage output. And I see that. But my sort of counter is that your opponent has every incentive, if they can, to push to kill Black Lightning to eliminate that control. And at 75 points, that's a huge loss to your team. Not only, just looking at that, but the pretty much the force modification that multiplier that you have from enhancement. But anyway, keep going. Red Hood was quite interesting and useful, and probably one of the best 70-point attackers that we have in the game. But no one's going to look at him, unfortunately, because reasons. I understand somebody would say like, hey, look, he only has 1 click of movement attack. He gets knocked off of that. He has a mediocre range, and I understand that. But when you start looking at his tools, you start looking at what he can do as a figure, Red Hood is a really good piece. And I don't know why people don't play him or at least look at him from a low, economic, perspective. You have Harley Quinn, who's crap. Hour Man, I don't know why we got a new Hour Man. We didn't need that. Tattoo Man is crap. Ra's al Ghul is mediocre. The Atom is useful only because of his point value and what he can do. Manhunter is okay. Technocrat is really good. Hawkman is really good. Bronze Tiger is really good. Vicky Vale is really not as good anymore because of Domino, but for the time she was good. Calculator is okay. And Merlin lost ATAs, just killed him. So we see a lot of characters that we could sort of use and build teams around. Unfortunately, what's going on is that when we go further into the set, we start to see the imbalance occur. Or the imbalance occur. Sorry, I said unbalance. The imbalance occur. That things just outperform or does the job of the commons and uncommons, not just better, but remarkably better. And so you're stuck asking yourself, well, from a cost perspective, there isn't that much difference between a rare and a common and uncommon, majority of the time. Why, again, am I running, this low point crap or this common uncommon crap and not looking at, a rare? And that's the problem I think that happened with Joker's Wild, is that when you start saying like, oh, I have Batman enemy, you're going to look at Lady Shiva. Okay, oh, hey, I have some end cap, you're going to look at Mr. Freeze. Oh, I have a barrier Green Lantern, does it better. I have a nice array of powers, Johnny Thunder and Jakeem does it better. So there are problems. There are huge problems there. So if we fast forward a little bit more, we go to Deadpool real quick. Now again, from an accessibility standpoint, we see Deadpool starts us off, says, hey, here's this very nice, accessible piece for you to use. And it works in a shifting focus so that if you get more of them, you can have them work together. And that's where we could see people saying, hey, yeah, I'm going to play meta shifting focus Deadpool. Why am I playing meta shifting focus Deadpool? Well, because I have enough options to load these preset archetypes whenever I need to, or let me rephrase it, on a limited fashion that allows me to adapt to the changing atmosphere and dynamics of the game. And truth be told, shifting focus is cheating. It is pick a power. It's just limited, very limited pick a power. If you have a problem with Jakeem, you should have just as much problems with shifting focus, because from a design perspective, they functionally do the same thing, except when you use shifting focus, you have a whole new set of preset abilities that may be optimized or not completely optimized for that situation. If you go in and you look with your shifting focus capabilities, if you have 2 out of your 3 powers that are useful on that dial, then you are on par with a Jakeem at that standpoint in terms of utility, not overall strength. Please understand me clearly on that. But when it comes to utility, in that moment, you have exactly what you need. And if you have 3 or more powers that you can use off of a shifting focus character, then you're outpacing Jakeem and Goblin King, because you have selected exactly 3 powers that you need for the situation instead of being limited to 2. And I know that's a different way of looking at it, but realistically, that's what we're doing. So when we look at Wolverine, bam, here we go. We got a Wolverine that's hard to kill, that bucks the trend. He gives us something to think about. Okay, great. We have this awesome Wolverine. But nobody plays him because he doesn't have move and attack, and he just has stealth, and there's no ATA there to help him. Okay, we got Fool Killer, no one uses him. Madcap, no one uses him. Mercenary, Ninja, you'd be lucky to find one, even though a Ninja functionally is really good because of the Hydra TA, but hey, that's just me. Chipmunk Hunt shows up as a novelty. Tippy Toe as well. Grizzly doesn't show up. You Go Girl doesn't. Cable is the first character that we actually say, wow, you're really good, and we can build around you from a force perspective. Unfortunately, people don't. Now, why is that? Because simply he doesn't see through stealth. If Cable saw through stealth, we would see tons of people play Cable. And you would say, like, why would we see that? Well, because he has prob, and he has the ability to move around the map and take shots. The X-Men TA is not bad. You can even say, like, strip that off and, drop him down to $100. If you did that, people would flip. They would play this. This is the common that everyone would base their teams around. If you just got rid of the X-Men team ability and stripped off that extra like 10 to 20 points, and then even if you kept him at that, get rid of the X-Men team ability, allow him to see through stealth and take away improved movement, ignores hindering, and just give him improved movement, ignores improved targeting, ignores hindering. That's all you need. Keep the rest of his stuff the same. He has freaking phasing teleport for 3 clicks. You know, like, why does he need to ignore hindering terrain all the time? So anyway, Dark Deadpool is, I like him, but I know a lot of people don't. I think his point value is great. Domino is a mixed bag. Killer Brew has a place right now just because of Doc Ock and some other conversations that's been going on about him. No one's using Hitmonkey, Slapstick, or Solo. Stingray, Koi Boy comes up here and there. Diamondback doesn't. Bedlam doesn't. Phantom X doesn't. Psylocke or Pharaoh doesn't. Anarchist, no one knows that. Nor Tombstone or Angel Dust. Okay, so right there, what we can see is that even though we have fond views of this set, a majority of the base of the set we don't even look at. Alright, so I'm not going to go through Avengers Defenders War or Elseworlds or What If, mainly because those are recent, and I would definitely say that Elseworlds gives more power to the player from the common and uncommon slot, and I talk about that in the review. So if you haven't listened to the review of those sets, please go and do that. And that's the last video that was put up, and I mainly am making this just to sort of make up for that dead time of content. So if you like where I'm going with this, or let alone seeing why we don't see more economically feasible teams, please leave a comment below, or email me at startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. That's startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. If you wish to opine, keep it piffy, keep it interesting, keep it awesome, baby. I'm trying to make some adaptions from Nebraska. I got second place at Nebraska States. I can't say that I didn't have an enjoyable time. The venue, the Krypton Comics, is a great venue. There's some things more internally that I have to deal with myself. And one thing I have said to sort of like put things in focus is that a lot of people wish they had my problems. Like, a lot of people wish they had the problem. Like, oh yeah, you just made second place. I can't even break. Oh, you know, like, but that is a problem that I'm dealing with. Just being honest. Like, and I was just trying to put in perspective for some people. I've been competitively competing for over 4 years for heroclix, like on a high scale. And what's frustrating to me is, like, I haven't won a tournament, but I've been in tons of finals. And so when I look at myself as a player, no one's scared of playing dark logos. They'll respect me. No one's scared of playing me. Now, do I need to base my whole entire, playing scape around people being afraid to play me? No. But I do think when folks look at my record, or they'll look at my accomplishments, they're going to be like, nah, he's okay. He's like the Clyde Drexler of heroclix. He's okay, and he was in the era of Jordan, but you could like Clyde Drexler, but you really can't say Clyde Drexler could compete with Jordan. Now, he could give Jordan a run for his money, but he can't compete with Jordan. And so there's some things like with that I'm just sort of dealing with. So anyway, there's other things that I know that I've gotten messages on that are going on in the community right now. I'm not touching or talking about the particular individual that's been causing up a storm right now, mainly because a person's threatening physical violence, has threatened physical violence against one of my players, and so I don't want to incite that, or sorry, not players, teammates, and then two, I feel giving more attention to such person is a bad idea. It just allows more drama to be spewed. So I don't want to ever be a source of drama. So that's it. Again, I'm still playing with the new editing software and getting, like, none of the stuff is right on my desktop. So if either the sound's too loud, too soft, whatever it may be, just leave it in the comments below and I'll try to get that, adjusted and whatnot. So thank you for listening. And remember, we all have to start over sometime. Oh, and one other thing. There is a longtime listener of the show. His name's Devin. He has started up his own heroclix channel. He does unboxing reviews. And I just want to give a shout out to him. It's Happy Little Heroclix. The guy is the judge for the Nebraska tournaments at Krypton Comics. He's been in the game for a long time and he knows a lot about heroclix. And watching some of the videos, he has a really nice setup to show you the figs in really good detail. So if you can, just go over there, check out his videos, see if you like it, and then say, hey, Dark Logo sent me, okay? All right, I would really appreciate that. And now, outro. We all have to start over sometime, blah, 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 and I'm out.